Hello fun people, I'm Isaac Carlson and I'm focused on spreading magic by discussing Disney, DreamWorks, and animation. And today we're going to attempt to finally understand the backstory of Donkey. What happened to make him a chatting, annoying, singing animal sidekick? And of course, if you are new here and you'd like to join this movie-loving community, then consider subscribing. For the longest time, every theory, inquiry, and discussion around Donkey implied that he might have been a human who was transformed into a donkey. And there are moments where this kind of appears to be the case, but the reality is that this waffle-loving donkey has always been a donkey. You see, we learned from the internet show Swamp Talk that Donkey descends from a line of great donkeys, and we are even shown Donkey Sr., the great creature that cured magic measles disease. What an honorable man. Or, mammal. We also learned that Donkey is 1/8 unicorn, which is the cause of a lot of his more annoying characteristics according to Shrek.
Nothing like a unicorn. They're loud, flashy, and don't know when to take a hint. Oh. You are a unicorn.
Donkey even references his mother, who he remembers having in his life during chaotic family Christmases.
My mama used to always say, Christmas ain't Christmas till somebody cries. Usually that someone's me.
This all means that Donkey had a huge family of donkeys and other magical creatures who surrounded him throughout his early life. He was a part of something that he loved at one point, but when we see him, he seems to be sometimes tormented by the body that he has. From him clamoring to feel a part of his body that he doesn't actually have, it seems like his mind might be within an animal that he was not born within, if that makes sense at all.
Oh man, I can't feel my toes. I don't have any toes.
Donkey also acknowledges that he remembers learning how to speak when he switches bodies with Puss in Boots and Shrek the Third. Clearly, there's some type of magic going on within his backstory.
Finest. Oh, you'll learn to control that.
Donkey seems to feel removed from his body and has an understanding that he was altered forever at some point, which seems even further solidified by him explaining that at some point he was tormented. He appears to grasp that he has a past life before being a talking donkey. There was something traumatic that happened. To explain this, some have tried to take on the idea that Donkey was transformed because of the work by the Coachman from Pinocchio. That man was the person who recruited young boys to come to Pleasure Island, where they would smoke, fight, and act horribly until their naughty behavior transformed them into donkeys. Some type of curse or magic on that island turned these boys completely into animals to be used in salt mines if they remained on that place long enough. Since Pinocchio was right in front of Donkey at the fairy tale collection, Donkey truly seems like he was a partially transformed boy who might have escaped from that torment and magic. Donkey appeared to have been one of the few to have gone to Pleasure Island and have been able to avoid becoming a slave within the mines. I mean, Donkey even appears to be the same species as some of the boys, but the problem with that idea is that it directly goes into conflict with the fact that Donkey was always a donkey. And in my opinion, Donkey always being a donkey lines up a lot better with what we know about him, especially when we look at the consequences of him taking the happily ever after potion. A lot of the ideas around him being a human were pretty compelling until we see that when he took True Love's most beautiful form, he didn't become a person, he became a stallion. If there would have been a moment to showcase his internal desire to become a human, that would have been it. But he doesn't. His dream was to become a gorgeous horse. Donkey is a small donkey and has been this way his entire life. And he further supports this by admitting that he's a part of a growing trend of vocal animals sweeping across the land.
The number of talking mammals has reached an all-time high.
While Donkey is able to communicate easily with everyone he comes into contact with, regardless if they want to speak to him or not, he's kind of the exception. Sure, Puss speaks along with the wolf, the three little pigs, and the three bears, and Harold, but all of these beings are fairy tale creatures. Normal animals, on the other hand, don't say a word. While we've seen all of those magical creatures talk, at the same time, throughout the Shrek films, there have been instances of animals being present that aren't as talkative as Donkey. Dragon doesn't say anything, Lord Farquaad, Prince Charming, and even Shrek and Fiona use emotionless and quiet horses, and Fiona even has a dog, and at no point does that dog say a single word. Shrek's world is not one where all animals speak, so then what sets Donkey apart? Because no one is sitting next to him all the time moving his mouth like a puppet. He's a talking donkey. But how could this have come about? As I have continued to explore the Shrek films ever since I was 4, jumping on my parents' bed, listening to the Shrek karaoke dance party, I needed to know the answer to this. This was something I had to look into. I mean, I vividly remember downloading Eddie Murphy's I'm a Believer onto my MP3 player. Donkey coming to life is just an iconic part of the story and is one that I think is just so important for the charm of the movie, which is why I wanted to understand how he went from a normal donkey in a large donkey family to one who can speak. And I think I found a pretty tragic answer. Although Donkey has been a donkey since his birth, it doesn't appear, though, that he was born as intelligent, thoughtful, and as talkative as we see him in Shrek, based on the director's commentary of the original Shrek film. You see, there was a story decided upon that they had considered including for Donkey during an early version of the film. They had planned out what happened to create Shrek's sidekick.
Back in the days when Shrek wanted to be a knight, he rescued Donkey from a witch. He found her caravan, and we had all this backstory on how Donkey could talk.
From the directors themselves, it seems that Donkey had been altered by a group of witches. His voice came from them, which makes a lot of sense. Especially as the Shrek saga continued, we got to see the hordes of those pointed hat-wearing, broom-riding ladies across the land, even enslaving Donkey in an alternate timeline, so it seems that they had used their magic to expand Donkey's mind and grant him the ability to talk. And I think that's why Donkey sometimes feels like he's in the wrong body. Maybe his mind needed to adjust to being with a donkey's body instead of a human, and this transformation took some time to process for him and internalize after it was done. They could have bestowed upon him the mind of a person, and that's what we see him wrestling with. Also, I think it's possible that those witches who turned him into a talking donkey were also the people who tormented him. I think they could have been the ones who gave him all of those swirlies, wedgies, and dark memories based off of how we saw witches treating him in Shrek Forever After. The bullying is hard to watch, man. I couldn't imagine going through that.
Already starting to feel nauseous from memories of wedgies and swirlies.
But how did you receive the wedgies when you are clearly not aware of the underpants?
I believe the witches stole him away from his family and brought him to life so the worst of their kind could have an entertaining carriage donkey who would sing songs for them, just like what they forced him to do in the 4th Shrek film. He was whipped, put down, and was often shown to be put into place for their own entertainment, and I believe it makes a lot of sense that was his original purpose. That would explain why he had to do that job for the witches when Shrek never existed and they took over, and would show how Donkey was one of the few fairy tale creatures who could show Shrek the way to Duloc. I believe witches made him to be a guide. I can't imagine what Donkey would have gone through coming to understand that he was only created to serve someone else, but I think this lines up with the information we learned from the alternate timeline. I believe he was made to be a slave for witches, but at some point he did escape and go into the possession of other people, as we learn in the 1st and 2nd Shrek film. At one point he was owned by a young boy, who was likely named Jack, who traded him for magic beans, which he never got over. And after that, it seemed that one of his next owners just kinda used him as a party toy.
This fool went off and had a party, and he have all the guests trying to pin a tail on me. Then they all got drunk and started beating me with a stick going, "Pinata, pinata."
Most of the time it seemed he was just being used and abused, and was not treated like a living individual, which is just absolutely wrong. But his last owner was a special type of jerk to him. I didn't really know where I was leading up with that, but she was just kind of like an old lady jerk. And I believe that lady who was controlling him was Mrs. Old MacDonald, which is hinted at again when we see Donkey working for the witches.
Shh, quiet, Ogre. You're gonna get me in trouble, and I need this job. I am not going back to work for Old MacDonald. Tell me
Old MacDonald had a farm. Great singing voice, Isaac. Great. Good job. Good job. Maybe Old MacDonald was the person who he had worked with after leaving the witches. And it's possible that the old woman who was trying to sell him in the 1st Shrek film was Old MacDonald's wife. I mean, we saw how abusive, cruel, and short-tempered she was. It's possible that this was the job Donkey despised having, and that without Shrek there to save Donkey from the forces who wanted his labor and music, he would have been forced to return to the witches who had created him, as we saw in Shrek Forever After. Luckily though, with Shrek in existence, he was able to turn Donkey's luck around, which is likely why Donkey feels so grateful, connected with, and loving towards the ogre when they first meet. Oh my goodness, I'm getting hot in here. Come on, teleprompter, we gotta get this gang a-going. Donkey seems to have lived a wild and confusing life before Shrek, where his very existence seemed futile as a slave to others. Suddenly with Shrek, someone finally was willing to protect him, and he no longer had to be under anyone's dominion. Donkey's love, passion, and goodwill could finally come through. I believe that Donkey was born to a loving family of donkeys and unicorns, was brought to life by cruel witches, and was inevitably freed to live his life by his best friend Shrek. But let me know down below what your thoughts and theories are surrounding Donkey's backstory. Also make sure to subscribe and click the beautiful bell, and then click on another magical video in the description or on the screen. Finally, as always, thanks for watching, hope you're having a great summer, and have a magical day.